I am currently at the par 3 at my local golf place. You will see me hit this, hopefully it looks okay. But I have received the phone call, the bat signal of sorts from Mariano. There's a private game going on today, Sunday, $25.50 with the $100 straddle. It's a big game. I'm excited to play it. Let me finish up this round of golf, have some fun, enjoy the montage, and then let's get to some poker. First, hole 3, 98 to the pin. At least that's what the sign says. An opportunity, have the 50. Don't know if that's what you're supposed to have out, but this is my version of golf. Bang on, first try, of course it is. Most of my weight on the front foot, that's what they tell you to do, right? That's a freaking dot, baby. Sit! Bang, enjoy the video. Well, I don't need to pull your leg any longer. Today's session is going to have some of the biggest pots I ever played in my life. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's short, it's sweet, but more importantly, it's got a whole lot of action. So let's hop right into this very first hand. And note, we're going into the stand-up game. It's going to cost $100 per player as a penalty if you lose. Under the gun makes it $200 to go. We're playing $25.50 for this hand. I'm on the button and I look down at ace-10 offsuit and I decide to 3-bet this hand to 700. Feels like it doesn't play that good post-flop and our opponent decides to make the call. We're going heads up to a flop here that comes out 7-6-5 with 3 diamonds. When he checks to me, I bet 500 and he calls. The turn card's at 3 of clubs now, putting a 4-liner out there. So when the action checks to me, not a whole lot of 4s that I'm going to be having here, right? So I just check it back. We're going off to a river card that is really interesting. It comes at 10 of hearts. And my opponent throws out a big bet here for $2,000. Feels like a pretty ABC call. I flick it in, and our opponent was going for some thin but very good value with pocket queens with the queen of diamonds. Absolutely played me to a fiddle, and we'll just keep on trekking along. Here we are. The stand-up game is off for the next hand, but what is on is the $100 straddle, which means I'm sitting on about 100 big blinds to start the hand. Sitting with about 10,000 in front of me, I'm under the gun and I look down at ace queen of hearts. I make it 300, middle position calls, and then the gentleman that goes by the name of Mariano, as you guys might know of him, he decides to throw in the old squeeze to $1,600. So when the action gets back to me, my hand's too good to fold. It's pretty good as a just call here, but the last thing I want to do is invite the player behind me to come along as well with my current stack depth. I decide to 4-bet this to $4,000, and the middle position player luckily folds and the action's back to Mariano. He thinks about it for just a few moments before deciding the hand's good enough to go all in with. He goes all in, having me obviously covered. We're up against pocket 9s, a good old-fashioned flip, which we decide to run out twice. The top board, the first board I should say, comes out Jack, 4, 5, not looking great. But when the turn card comes at Jack of Hearts, it now introduces me the nut flush draw. We have so many more outs than we were expecting, hoping to hit it, but the river is a black 5 of spades, double pairing the board. Luckily for us, we get 2 shots at this, and although it's really hard to beat Mariano in these all-in pots, I'm going to do my damnedest of best to do it. This next board comes out King 10, 3 with 2 diamonds and a spade. The turn card comes E10 of spades, so we have even more outs now than we did before. Any king, any queen, any jack, any ace now give me the best hand. And the river card is a queen of clubs. Luckily for us, we end up binking that river. I'm going to take a chop pot in this instance as there was a lot of money on the table in that one. To be quite honest, not a lot has gone on here. In the middle of the stand-up game, obviously the dust starts to settle, but in this next one, the stand-up game has been agreed to come back on. So after being off for a couple of rounds, we're right back into the mix here. Stand-up game is on, but this time it's significantly more painful. $200 per person, which means, yeah, let's not have to pay like $1,500 or $1,400 it is to all these people. We're back in the mix, baby. And in this next hand, once again, we look down to the parking lot hand. Ace-queen offsuit. Slightly inferior to the last one, but who the hell cares? We're raising it to 200 here. Middle position, Linglin, as well as the button decide to make the call. We're going off to a flop 3 ways. It comes out Jack 5-4. Feels like I've been seeing this flop all day. I can't just give up here. So let's just go for it. We realize that this is probably a good spot to just put max pressure. I just had a bet for 400. Don't have to worry about jacks ever, feels like. And although 5s and 4s are definitely feasible, once again, not the most likely. And luckily for me, without much retaliation, we end up getting this one through. We have to show our hand for the stand-up game. A little bit of giggles go around here as ace high is the winner. Probably was the best hand anyways, but I don't have to pay that $1,400 stand-up game bounty. There's one thing that I think I have a really disgusting tendency of doing, and that's playing fairly passive in spots that just don't lend themselves to needing to be played as passive as they are. This next hand is a great example of me understanding that and trying to improve upon that. This is the very next shuffle from the last hand you just saw, and although we just took down a nice pot and got out of the mix there, I don't have to pay this bounty for the stand-up game. It's easy to just kind of be lax and let the game just kind of go right past me, which is honestly not a good idea. In this next hand, there is a $100 straddle on, and there's like 2 or 3 limps when it gets to me in the big blind. I look down at ace-4 of spades. Traditionally speaking, throwing in a $50 chip here is probably decent, like whatever, you can get to a flop, you have a suited ace, let's do it. But in actuality, I think the best thing to do here is going to go ahead and obviously isolate the limpers. I can be in position against a small blind limper if he decides to make the call, but outside of that, it just makes sense, right? We got to do this with a little bit of bluffy hands, and these suited wheel aces seems like a good idea, so let's just go for it. I decided to ISO raise pretty big here to 600. Making this as big as possible is probably a good idea without going into goofy territory. The point being, I'm going to be out of position against most of the players in the hand with the straddler and the button limper, so let's get this underway. I make it 600, and luckily for me, everyone folds. A small pot for sure, nothing to really write home about, but definitely something I'm proud of is understanding that I'm not getting caught up in the moment of the stakes being too big and just kind of going for it when I see that it's there to be gone for.
Balls are coming a little hot. We have a shot at a 2 putt for par. Trying to read these greens, honestly, just looks like we're at a little bit of a downslope, but who am I to know? I'm just a golf novice. Oh my goodness. Is that a birdie? Is that, ladies and gentlemen, is that a birdie? That's a bona fide birdie. I think I'm gonna give up on the poker vlogs and we are gonna solely do the golf channel. Welcome to Close to Golf. Wait, Close to Scratch.
To be quite honest, the moment is definitely starting to set in. The game is really big, the action's definitely off the rails, and things for the most part are a little swingy. To this point, we're still down 4,000 or 5,000 here, but in a game like this, pots are going left and right over the 5-digit mark, so it's only about time, or a matter of time, before I find my luck. And this next hand, I'm definitely going to try it. When the straddle is on to 100, and the middle position player raises to 300, I'm in the small blind with the old jack-10 of spades. Let's just make the call here and see the flop, and we're going heads up to a flop that is as good as it's ever going to get for my hand. Ace, Queen, 9, and I'm open-ended for a straight flush. My heart is racing, playing some massive stakes with a lot of money on the table, and I've got so many outs I can't even count them out. I check to continue playing in flow, and my opponent bets 500. I think there's obviously an argument to be made here to raise, but on board like this, my opponent's going to have all the aces and all the queens, and I'm probably going to only have 9s here. So not that that matters too much, but I make the call here, and we're going off to a turn card that comes the beautiful 6 of spades, giving me the flush. I think about my options immediately, and I feel like checking here is probably not the best idea. If my opponent ever has a set like aces, queens, or 9s, he's probably going to check this back here. But if I bet, he can never fold those hands. So I decide to go with the latter option, and I decide to bet 1,300, a little bit on the bigger size here, going like 80 or 75%. Again, my goal is to really bet massive here to allow myself to once again bet big on the river. It's going to be hard to get it all in, to be quite honest here. Maybe you can, but we'll see what happens on the river after my opponent makes a call. And the river is a beautiful brick, the 10 of clubs. Sure, it does bring in some straights, but once again, I think we would have got raised by better flushes. And the only thing that my opponent can have here for value, it feels like, is maybe the king high flush sometimes. So with the action on me, once again, when I lead the turn, I'm going to lead the river, baby. On this beautiful river card, I decide to go for a big bet once again. I bet $4,000. My opponent thinks about it for a moment before deciding on a call. Let's go. We announce our jack high flush, and it's a sick cooler after he shows pocket nines. Wow, that was a really gross flop. Damn near a flip, honestly, after all the outs that I flopped there. But like he said, and like we all know, there's no way he can ever get away from that hand there. And luckily for me, I was just on the right side of a cooler. And maybe we left a little bit of money on the table, but it's hard to tell. It's hard to get money when you have all the outs, right? And you got all the good cards. Either way, big pot, over $10,000 coming my way. There's nothing like breaking through the monotony of no limit hold'em, like introducing a little bomb pot action. Don't need to bore you guys too much with what happened, but luckily for us, we end up flopping the nuts on one board, and after someone bets pretty big on the flop, I end up potting it here with my nut flush and end up getting the fold. Can't complain, as I didn't have a single thing on the other board, so we're gonna go ahead and take down $2,000 in profit. You love to see it, baby. Once again, we are playing the stand-up game. This is like the fourth or fifth time we have been in the mix here. We lost our first one, but have been lucky enough that that was the smallest one we played, and things have been really panning out for us since. And this next one, under the gun, raises to 300. You might be thinking that seems pretty regular, but there is no straddle on this hand. The stand-up game is on, and there's like 4 or 5 people left to go here. And after that big of a raise, I'm next to act, and I look down at ace king. Well, big slick. This is a pretty easy spot for us to just try to get the money in the middle if we can. Yeah, let's not get ahead of myself here, but obviously we have an immediate 3-bet incoming. I make it 1,200 to go, a little bit on the bigger size, but don't know how to react when my opponent bets so big themselves. Considering how deep we are now, we're playing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 18,000 effective, which, since there's no straddle, is a whole lot of money behind. A lot of big blinds, as some would say. So with the action back to my opponent, he now starts going to the tank. Both of us don't have a button, which is obviously playing in our heads now. And as we mentioned before, we kicked up the bounty number to 200 a person. After quite a bit of thinking, our opponent decides to make the fold. We show our hand to collect our bounty or stand-up or stupid game chip. And luckily for us, we will not have to face the wrath of the bounty. So all of this poker has left us here. The final hand of the session, which I can promise you does have some fun action in store. There is a straddle on to 100, and under the gun decides to limp for $100. On me now, I'm next to act, and I look down at pocket queens, the ladies. We decide to raise it up. I isolate to 500 here. A little bit on the big size for sure. I think 400 is probably a better idea, but hey, it is what I made it, so I'm going to go with it. The action folds over to Linglin on the button, and she decides to 3-bet to 2,000. I did already let the table know that I had planned on leaving at 10 o'clock, and we're getting near that number. This is kind of scary now, as all of the money that I've got to this point, the little win that I've ended up carving out for myself, is now in jeopardy against one of the most aggressive players that I've played in poker. Oh, action's back over to me. Luckily for me, Linglin is not only going to be weighted to aces and kings and ace king here, she can definitely have a hand like pocket jacks, pocket tens, as well as some other holdings such as bluffs. After thinking about it for a second, I decide it's probably best for me to throw in the 4-bet. Again, being out of position against a player as wild and capable as her, it's probably not a good idea to give up the betting lead, so I make it $6,000 to go. A little bit on the bigger size, but considering we're both over 150, 180 big blinds effective, seems like going bigger is probably better. The action is back over to her, and after a bit of thinking, she decides to let it go. She would immediately tell me she had ace queen, and she asked to run out the board, which we do, and it came out ace king high. Oof. Luckily for us, we made it as big as we did, as she decided to make the fold, but nonetheless, kind of a disgusting flop there. Luckily for me, we get out of dodge, and an amazing session is going to come to a close, ending up booking a small win here, but let's talk about it more in the post-session interview. Thank you guys again for watching all my hands.
With my eyes closed, it's too easy. Too easy. I can do this with my eyes closed. It's too easy. Too easy.
Hello, beautiful beautiful people of the world, that is going to bring our session with Mariano to an end. It is a day in advance. I'm now at the chipping green at my local golf course. If you're into golf, let me know. I'm awful, but I'm here trying. Nonetheless, we were into that game for, if I'm not mistaken, 15,000. So that was quite a big buy-in for me, at least. There were so many different things that went on in that session, and getting a chance to play massive bot against a good friend. Kind of exciting, kind of scary, but for Mariano, it's just another day, just another Sunday for him. Things obviously could have panned out slightly better in some spots. We could have slightly played better. And obviously, if I knew that my opponent had a set when I made that flush, maybe we bet a little bigger, but I feel like I got the most we could have out of the situation. Baby, we were into the game for 15,000 and out for 19,575, if I'm not mistaken. So almost a $5,000 win. Played for about 3 hours. Didn't have to play for too long. The game broke shortly after. That's going to do it for today's video. If you guys enjoy these type of videos, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to let me know down below what you guys want to see. Outside of that, a couple important things to mention. I'll be in Baltimore on August 19th, which is a week. It should be next week, which is a Saturday, 12 to 5 o'clock. We've slightly changed our times where we're going to be in there. We'll be out there having some fun. 1-3 epic. It's going to be a wonderful time. Meetup game of all meetup games. We'll be there, like I said, next Saturday. The Run Good series is going to be in town just a week or two after I leave. Might come back to play the Run Good series at the Baltimore. All the dates and the tournaments are here on your screen as well. Hope you guys have a lovely day. Stay happy, healthy. More importantly, run good at the tables, y'all. Deuces.